Every day, an unspoken war is fought in the human mind. It is a war we are actively losing, not because we lack the weapons to fight, but because we have forgotten how to use our most formidable defense. We live in an era that worships noise. We treat the ability to speak, to react, and to instantly broadcast our thoughts as the ultimate form of power. We are taught from a very young age that to be seen is to exist, and to be heard is to conquer. Society has convinced us that silence is synonymous with absence, with weakness, and with irrelevance. But if you look closely at the turning points of human history, at the empires that stood for centuries, the psychological masters who controlled entire rooms with a single glance, and the leaders who remained unshakable while the world burned around them, you notice something strange. Their true power did not lie in what they said. It lay in what they chose not to say. While the masses scrambled to fill the air with meaningless sound, the elite used a weapon so quiet, so deeply unsettling, that it shifted the balance of power without a single drop of blood being spilled. Think about the last time you sat in total silence with another human being. Not a comfortable silence between old friends gathered around a fire, but the raw, unvarnished, heavy absence of sound in a room where conversation is expected. Within seconds, an invisible pressure begins to build. Your heart rate slightly elevates, your eyes dart around, searching for a focal point. Your mind frantically races to find a topic, a joke, a complaint, a passing observation, anything at all to break the tension. Why does the absence of sound feel like a physical threat? Why do we treat a pause in conversation not as a space for reflection, but as a dangerous vacuum that must be filled at all costs? Psychologists call this the horror vacui, the profound and primal fear of the empty space. In our modern landscape, silence is rarely experienced as peace. It is experienced as a profound and terrifying vulnerability. To understand this, we must look at how far we have drifted from our natural state. Historically, for hundreds of thousands of years, silence was the baseline of human existence. Sound was an event. The crack of thunder, the roar of a predator, the urgent call of a tribe member, these were auditory interruptions that demanded immediate attention and often signaled a matter of life and death. The mind evolved to associate sudden noise with danger and silence with safety. Today, we have engineered a world where the exact reverse is true. Noise is our permanent baseline and silence is the anomaly. We wake up to alarms, we commute with podcasts, we work amidst the hum of open offices and endless notifications, and we fall asleep to the glow of televisions. We have built an auditory fortress around ourselves, a relentless wall of sound designed to keep something out. But what exactly are we so afraid of letting in? The answer is terrifying in its simplicity. We are afraid of ourselves. When the noise finally stops, the masks we wear for society begin to slip. Without the constant distraction of external stimuli, we are left entirely alone with the one thing we spend our entire lives trying to escape. We are forced to confront our own thoughts, our unresolved regrets, our hidden anxieties, and the quiet, nagging truth of our own mortality. Because true silence is so incredibly rare in the modern world, it has become deeply unnatural to the human nervous system. And because it feels unnatural, it breeds anxiety. We view the silent person with suspicion. We wonder what they are hiding. We project our own insecurities onto their quietness. This fundamental human flaw, this inability to sit quietly in a room alone, has transformed silence from a natural state of being into the ultimate psychological tool. Those rare individuals who can withstand the pressure of silence, who do not feel the desperate urge to perform, to explain, or to justify themselves, possess a terrifying advantage over those who do. They recognize that most people will gladly hand over their power, their secrets, and their dignity simply to avoid a few seconds of awkward quiet. This is the great mystery of human interaction. We leak our most valuable information not when we are tortured, but when we are uncomfortable. We overshare, we negotiate against ourselves, we apologize for things we didn't do, and we dilute our own presence, all to serve the false god of continuous conversation. The masters of history understood this behavioral glitch perfectly. They realized that by simply withholding sound, they could force others to unravel. They did not need to shout to establish dominance, they only needed to wait. They cultivated silence not as a retreat from the world, but as a deliberate, calculated, and impenetrable armor. To master silence is to master the human condition itself, because it requires conquering the primal fear of the void. To truly understand why silence exerts such a powerful, almost hypnotic hold over the human psyche, we must look into the deepest caverns of the unconscious mind. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung spent his life mapping this internal wilderness, delving into the shadowy corners of the human experience that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Jung understood that human beings are not transparent to themselves. We do not walk through the world as unified, fully integrated creatures. Instead, we carry a vast, hidden reservoir of suppressed desires, irrational fears, and unresolved conflicts. Jung called this the shadow. To protect ourselves from the terrifying reality of our own shadow, we construct a persona, a social mask, a curated identity that we present to the world to secure love, acceptance, and validation. Jung observed that modern man is constantly seeking external validation because he cannot bear the crushing weight of his own inner vacuum. We use chatter as a psychological shield. By constantly projecting our thoughts outward, by maintaining a steady stream of verbal engagement, we prevent the darker, heavier contents of our own unconscious from rising to the surface. Words become a distraction technique, a way to keep the mind occupied so it doesn't have to look in the mirror. When you impose silence on a conversation, you do something incredibly profound and deeply disruptive. You remove the shield. Jung noted that human beings cannot tolerate a psychological vacuum. When we are denied the external feedback we expect, we do not remain neutral. We immediately begin to project our own internal state onto the silence. If you make a statement and the person across from you simply looks at you without saying a word, your mind instantly begins to fabricate scenarios. Are they judging me? Have I exposed a weakness? Was my argument flawed? Are they seeing right through my persona? The silence acts as a blank canvas, and we instinctively paint our deepest insecurities upon it. The person who speaks constantly is always at the mercy of their audience, begging for clues on how they are being perceived, constantly adjusting their mask based on the reactions of others. But the person who masters silence creates a psychological mirror. By refusing to fill the void, they force the other person to confront their own reflection. In the quiet space between words, the unconscious mind reveals itself. The other person will invariably begin to talk faster, to over-explain, to stumble over their words, pulling off their own armor piece by piece, simply because they cannot stand the reflection they see in your silence. Long before modern psychology sought to map the mind or understand the mechanics of projection, ancient strategists understood that silence was the ultimate weapon of deception and control. To see this in action, we travel back over 2,000 years to the chaotic, blood-soaked era of the Warring States period in ancient China. Here, amidst fractured empires and endless conflict, a military philosopher named Sun Tzu penned a text that would alter the nature of strategy forever: the art of war. Sun Tzu understood a fundamental, unalterable truth about human conflict. Whether it occurs on a battlefield, in a boardroom, or in a personal relationship, all warfare is based on deception. In the theatre of strategy, information is the absolute currency of survival. When you speak, you give away data. You reveal your intentions, your temperament, your anxieties, your intellectual limits, and your emotional triggers. To speak excessively is to voluntarily hand your enemy the blueprints to your own destruction. Sun Tzu advised that a masterful leader should be as formless as water and as inscrutable as the night. Formlessness is the ultimate defense. When you take a form, when you state a strong opinion, when you react in anger, when you show eagerness, you give your opponent a target to strike. You become predictable, and predictability is fatal. Consider the strategic weight of an unpredictable adversary. When an opponent cannot gauge your reactions, they cannot plan their counterattack. If you react instantly to a provocation, you have handed your opponent total control of the engagement. You have let them dictate the emotional climate of the interaction. You have proven that they hold the strings to your emotional state. But when a provocation is met with absolute, calculated silence, the entire strategic landscape shifts instantaneously. The aggressor, expecting a reaction, expecting resistance, finds only a void. This absence of feedback breeds intense paranoia. They begin to wonder if they have walked into a trap. They question their own intelligence and their own read of the situation. In their anxiety to break your silence, in their desperate need to force you to take a form, they will almost always overcompensate. They will make a reckless move, reveal their own hand prematurely, or offer. As the centuries turned, the theatre of power shifted from the misty battlefields of ancient Asia to the opulent, cutthroat courts of Renaissance Europe. Here, in the heart of Florence, a diplomat named Niccolò Machiavelli meticulously observed the dark arts of statecraft. He saw that power is rarely a matter of raw, physical force. It is, almost exclusively, an illusion maintained through the careful curation of perception. In his infamous and widely misunderstood treatise, The Prince, Machiavelli outlined a chillingly pragmatic truth. The masses are always taken by appearances. A ruler who speaks too much, who is too accessible, and who constantly explains his reasoning invariably appears common, insecure, and easily understood. Familiarity breeds contempt. The more you explain yourself, the more you lower your stature to the level of those you wish to lead or influence. The masters of political intelligence rarely justify their actions. They understand that authority is built on an unbreakable aura of mystique. When a powerful leader issues a directive and refuses to engage in unnecessary debates or defensive explanations, they signal absolute certainty. They imply that their reasoning is operating on a level far above the comprehension of ordinary men. Think of the highest stakes negotiations of our time. The individual who dominates the room is rarely the one doing the most talking. The one who truly dominates is the one who speaks last, who allows everyone else to exhaust their arguments, expose their vulnerabilities, and deplete their energy. By maintaining silence, they preserve their aura of absolute control. They understand the heavy permanence of sound. Once a word leaves your lips, you can never take it back. It becomes the property of your enemies. But strategy is not merely about dominating others or navigating the treacherous waters of external politics. The most profound, the most difficult, and the most rewarding application of silence is not outward, but inward. To witness this ultimate form of mastery, we must travel to the cold, brutal, freezing northern frontier of the Roman Empire, where the most powerful man in the Western world sat completely alone in his military tent. Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Rome and a devout Stoic philosopher, ruled over an empire facing catastrophic plague, endless rebellion, and devastating economic collapse. Yet, inside his mind, there was an unnatural, untouchable stillness. He did not write his private journals, the legendary texts we now know as the Meditations, to impress posterity or to philosophize for an audience. He wrote them as a psychological survival guide. Marcus Aurelius spoke frequently of the inner citadel, an impenetrable fortress within the mind where no external event, no betrayal, and no catastrophe could penetrate unless the individual voluntarily opened the gates. He realized that the noise of the world is entirely neutral. Events are just events. It is our internal commentary, our frantic, emotional reactions, our endless complaining that transform external events into personal suffering. When the world around you is chaotic, the natural human impulse is to scream back at the chaos. We want to vent, to rage against injustice, to declare our victimhood. But Aurelius recognized that this internal noise only weakens the spirit. True self-control begins with the silencing of the internal dialogue. It is the rare ability to observe a crisis without immediately attaching a hysterical emotional narrative to it. By cultivating an internal silence, you create a space between the stimulus and your response. In that fraction of a second, you cease to be a puppet of your emotions, and you become the master of your fate. Let us bring this timeless wisdom back to the present day. The battlefields of Sun Tzu, the courts of Machiavelli, and the fortresses of Marcus Aurelius have now converged into a single, hyper-connected, relentlessly noisy arena. The modern digital world. Today, we are told that to be relevant, we must constantly broadcast. Social media algorithms are literally designed to exploit our psychological discomfort with silence. They reward the immediate, the emotional, and the outraged reaction. They monetize our desperate need for external validation. As a result, we have become a society that is highly reactive, but profoundly, dangerously weak. We have traded the strategic depth of the silent mind for the cheap thrill of immediate visibility. But even today, underneath the digital noise, the fundamental rules of human psychology have not changed one bit. In the modern workplace, in business and in relationships, silence remains the ultimate differentiator. The person who cannot stop talking reveals their desperate need for approval. They tell the world exactly how to manipulate them. Conversely, the professional who uses silence deliberately commands an unnatural amount of respect. When they finally speak, their words are tree